How do you take a story like Terry's, because it's obviously what she's gone through is so heartbreaking, and say, okay, now in this lawsuit, we're looking to prove that this chemical is what caused not only Terry's husband's death, but many others?
Well, we actually use what you're familiar with, a differential diagnosis, right? We have an expert who understands the science as it relates to glyphosate exposure in cancer, go through all the possible risk factors, all the possible causation or the etiology of the cancer, and rule out the things that aren't there. He wasn't a smoker. He didn't use other chemicals. He was healthy. He ate well. He wasn't obese. I mean, you go through all the different things that you have to rule out, and what you're left with is Roundup.
Dr. Toscano, we just recently, I think it was a few months ago, had Aaron Brockovich on our stage, and a lot of people have watched that movie. How do you tease out, again, all of the things in society that potentially can cause cancer? And in this particular situation, because we're talking about glyphosate, how do you reconcile all that as an oncologist?
So, you know, what I do is I primarily treat lymphoma. I do research on lymphoma. I treat a lot of patients with lymphoma, and it's the vast majority of cases, there is no known cause. There's no known exposure. It's not associated with smoking or drinking. So it's really difficult to make an association. And I'm very sorry for the loss. I see it almost every day. But we need to do more research. I think that there is a signal, no question. But at what point do we ban it? Are there safer alternatives that have a lower risk?
California is the first state to actually come out and require that glyphosate is labeled as a potentially cancer-causing agent. What is your comment to that?
There is some data that suggests that it is potentially a carcinogen. But that goes a long way from saying that there's absolute proof.
I just want to say, Dr. Toscano, I appreciate your perspective, I really do. But I think it's really important to reflect that this is almost verbatim what Big Tobacco said about cigarettes causing cancer. For years, they generated studies saying it didn't cause cancer and saying we need more science, we need more science, we need more science. It took lawyers and a coalition of activists and people who really cared to expose the fraud for what it was. And we are in the middle of that right now.
I don't represent Monsanto or any of these companies. And I would say that the research that I've looked at, many of them are not associated with the pesticide or herbicide industry. So I think you have to be careful making blanket statements. The important thing is that Roundup is widely used. And I'm concerned about the Roundup Ready crops, and they're spraying it all over our food products. But lymphoma is relatively rare. So I would think that if there was a direct association, we would see more. And in fact, the incidence of lymphoma has leveled off in recent years.
I, for years, was representing scientists around the world who were concerned about Roundup and GMOs, and it was always very, very similar to what the doctor's saying. We don't know, but here's the evidence. And as I started to give the information to medical conferences, the doctors started prescribing non-GMO diets, and I realized that they're actually experimenting on more humans in their clinics than many times the number of rats and mice that were fed this. And so this is being repeated over and over again with thousands of doctors. So even if we don't have the peer-reviewed data that says this is a smoking gun, we do have enough clinical experience and personal experience so that the wise thing, the take-home message is avoid Roundup and things that are sprayed with Roundup. Eat organic and let the scientists figure it out. But in the meantime, we need to protect ourselves.
We do need to take a quick break, and in so doing, I want to reinforce, Terry, my condolences to you and everything that you've been through personally. Looks like you know, watching you two on that beautiful farm was heart-wrenching to see you lost the love of your life. So thank you for sharing your story.